Good morning, everyone. What a pleasure to have you here this morning. This is Jeffrey Britton, Chairman of the Business Roundtable, CBRT. This is going to be a very eventful, exciting morning. And as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. We're going to come out of here really sharpened with a focus of closing this year and preempting for next year to really ramp things up. Let me open with prayer, if we may. Thank you. Lord, we just acknowledge you today, Almighty. We just confess our frailties to you. We thank you that we can have a life eternal with you in heaven. We thank you, Lord, for the throne of mercy and grace that we can come to daily. And we pray now, Lord, we're grateful, thankful for this opportunity to come together, to rub as iron sharpens iron, to become better leaders with our businesses, with the community overall. We pray this morning that, Lord, you would bless the message, our speaker, every participant that's engaged here this morning with us, that, Lord, we may prosper and do well to propagate your kingdom in the earth. We pray these things in Jesus' name. We want to introduce some of the staff folks to you. Krista Moxon is our manager of community relations, and she is in touch with most of you day in and day out. Teresa Anderson is our new executive manager at the headquarters. Megan Van Cleve is our corporate liaison, and Sean Bronstein is our video producer. And we just want to thank each and every one of these folks for making these kinds of events possible day in and day out throughout the year. We also want to give very special thanks this morning to our sponsors, Challenger, Gray, and Christmas, counselors, and also Structure Tech Group. Thank you to both of these organizations and companies for sponsoring today's event. We're going to be hearing here momentarily from our keynote speaker this morning, Ron Kitchens, who is Senior Partner and Chief Executive Officer for Southwest Michigan First. And this is really exciting. It's very timely, as we said earlier, really culminating this year, preempting, getting things teed up for next year and beyond. How do we really manage our organizations through everything we've been through and are going through this year with Preeminence? A very timely project. At the end of Ron's presentation, we will have interaction, question and answer period. We would ask each of you to enter the chat room and bring forth the questions, and then we will reciprocate. Following that, Ron is going to share a personal testimony. We'll do an invitation, and then we'll do a takeaway. And many times that's the most powerful part of the entire event is what are we walking out with? What are we taking away from the event? With that, Ron's focus is to lift up leaders by accelerating their impact, influence, and well-being in career, family, and community. Ron is the Senior Partner and Chief Executive Officer of Southwest Michigan First, an economic consulting firm which has grown compounded revenue at 20% annually during his 14 years as Chief Executive Officer. In addition, Ron leads Consultant Connect and is the publisher of 269 magazine, a board member of Impact Athletic, the past chair of the Kalamazoo Institute of Arts, and trustee of Western Michigan University. Ron is the founder of the Leadership Conference, Catalyst University, and the co-founder of Next, an invitation-only leadership symposium for global economic development leaders. He previously served on the staff of U.S. Senator John Danforth, and he was actually an elected alderman at the age of 21. What a rich history and what Ron brings to the table here this morning. Ron and his team have been extensively featured in over 100 national and international media outlets, including the Wall Street Journal, Fast Company, CBS, NBC, Fox, USA Today, Forbes, Fortune, The Economist, and NPR, National Public Radio. In 2018, Southwest Michigan First has been recognized by Best and Brightest Companies to Work For and Outside Magazine as the best place to work in America. Ron is co-author of 3 books, including his latest release, Uniquely You, as well as the bestseller, Community Capitalism. He speaks globally on leadership, creative, thriving, engaged, multi-generational teams, and entrepreneurial cultures. He blogs and podcasts at ronkitchens.com and can be found on Twitter at Ron Kitchens. Without further ado, what a pleasure to introduce to you Ron Kitchens with today's topic, preeminence and curating the future. Well-needed topic. Ron, over to you. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Jeffrey. I appreciate it. It's great to be with you all today. I wish we could be in person. You know, I think one of the things that we all suffer with is this lack of community. And as incredible as it is, this technology we have, that if I'd have come to you last January and said, we're going to have a world where we can all, we're going to talk to each other on video, phone calls, we'd all raised our phones and went, well, we have this iCall thing and we can get on there and do one-on-one, but none of us could imagine that we'd ever be able to afford technology that allowed us to talk to hundreds of thousands of people at once. I did a conference 2 weeks ago where there were 6,000 people on at the same time. It was incredible, but it didn't give community, didn't give that sense of, of being in communion together, sharing laughs, sharing, breaking bread, and truly bonding. So I wish we could do that. Let's acknowledge that and acknowledge that, there are things that aren't great. Well, we can acknowledge that COVID-19 sucks, that, the things going on right now are really tough. I got 4:30 this morning, I got a text that says, the governor wants to shut down all workplaces and she's going to mandate that people stay home from work. And it's not political, but the data is pretty clear. People aren't getting COVID at work. They're getting COVID in social situations. I have to serve as a trustee at Western Michigan University. And the safest place you can be in this community is on campus at Western. We're not seeing students, faculty, or staff get sick on campus. It's really those social interactions. So it's important that we stay separate, but it's also important that we acknowledge it's no fun right now. There's nothing exciting about COVID, except with COVID, it changes the pace of things. I'm really getting kind of tired of people saying, well, we're just going to go back to the way things were. We're post-COVID. I think the first thing we have to remind ourselves is that the greatest indicator of future failure is past success. Because we try to do things the way they used to be. We try to do things in a way that's about how it used to be because we hark back to that. We have euphoric recall So we remember things better than they were, and the future scares us. So what do? We want to go back to that place where we were before that we think felt safe. I'm reminded of, this bullfighting ring. And so I was in Barcelona. This is the oldest bullfighting ring continually operated in all of Spain. And it's, one of the things that, we learned in this ring, and I'm not a big proponent of bullfighting. In fact, I've never been to a bullfight, but it's really not my thing, is that when you study this, and I took a tour of this facility, what we found was that in bullfights, what bulls do, and they all do the same thing, is they retreat to the place they believe is safe. So it's called a querencia. So when a bull's being attacked by the matadors, when it's in the middle of this battle in this ring, in this arena, it goes to the same place every time because it believes it's safe. Well, we all know intellectually we do the exact same thing. In times of COVID, we're doing that same thing. Well, once this is over, we'll just go back to this. We'll go to that place that I felt safe. But just like bullfighting, we're just signaling the place we're the most vulnerable. Future failure is because of past success. That place might have been safe at one point. It might have been your strong place. It might have been the sweet spot for your business or the sweet spot for your career, but it's not the sweet spot anymore. It's the place you're the most vulnerable. So in bullfighting, the matadors know that they no longer have to worry about where the bull is because they know where the bull's going. And so we've got to change that intellectually as leaders. And I have lost the ability to control slides. Oh, there we go. So in my world, part of that controlling is to make sure that I'm staying focused on what's important today. So every morning on my calendar, and I never know why this is 7:20. I have to change the graphic because it comes up at 6:30 every day. 6:30 every day, this graphic comes up. And on my phone, it's my alarm. And it reminds me of Nehemiah 6:3. And it says, I'm doing great work and I cannot come down. But if you'll remember back to the story of Nehemiah. So Nehemiah is this incredible story of leadership, in a lot of cases leading when you're not in charge. And for me, that's to remind me, stay focused on what's important. So if you go back to the story of Nehemiah, King Artaxerxes rules the world as people know it at that time. He rules what we would call today the Middle East, of which Israel and Jerusalem are part of that. Nehemiah is a food taster. He's a slave. Now, what does that mean? The food taster, where do you rank? So we all think of food taster, and well, you're protecting the king from getting poisoned. It's kind of true, but mainly it's foodborne illness. So it's Nehemiah's job to get sick and live through it. We don't have refrigeration at this time. We don't know proper cooking techniques. It's Nehemiah's job to keep the king from getting sick. So you begin to trust your food taster. They're the person that's keeping you healthy. And, excuse me, tickle in my throat. So Nehemiah's job is to keep the king safe. And so Nehemiah's kind of moping around for a while, and he's having these recurring dreams. And he's dreaming about Israel, and in particular, Jerusalem. He's dreaming about the fact that the traders who keep coming through the king's court are telling him about how the walls are down in Jerusalem and how the people are vulnerable and you can just, pillage the city anytime you want, and how they're being victimized by all of these travelers coming in. And although Nehemiah has never been there, nobody in his family that he knows has ever been there. He is Jewish. And so it really troubles his soul what's going on. So he's moping around, and finally the king says, Nehemiah, what's up? And Nehemiah says, I keep having these reoccurring dreams. think I'm supposed to do something about this. And so after a bit of discussion, the king says, all right, I'll give you the resources and the men, and you all go rebuild the wall. And I ask, after you get the wall rebuilt, that you come back to the court. Nehemiah agrees to do that. Off they go, takes the equipment, takes the materials, takes the men, and begins to go to work. Well, you would think the people would celebrate. Somebody's coming to your house to give you more security. Somebody who's coming to your house tomorrow and says, I'm going to put in a free security system. You're going to get the best security system known to man, 100% free. You'd probably think that was a pretty good idea. Even if nothing else, you'd think, well, it's free. It's going to be awesome. I'll take it. But they didn't really work that way in Jerusalem. Nehemiah gets there. And of course, the people who had been victimizing others, they don't think it's a good idea. Why would it be a good idea to create safety for the people of Jerusalem? So they're against Nehemiah, but the average citizens are against him. Why? Because it's change, because it's different. So people begin to attack Nehemiah, and they attack him by spreading false rumors, and they attack him by physically throwing stones at him and trying to get he and his men to quit working. And then they attack him in the way a lot of us as successful leaders get attacked and we never know it. They attack him by flattery. They attack him by celebrating, because their only goal is to get Nehemiah to come down off that ladder, to get Nehemiah to stop his work. And so they say, well, Nehemiah, you were right. We were wrong. So come on down, stop what you're doing. Let us throw a party for you. Matter of fact, let us throw a 3-day festival in your honor. And we're going to throw it at this resort just outside of town. And we're going to celebrate you, and we're going to praise the king, and it's going to be the best party you ever saw. Well, a lot of us get caught up in that. We get caught up in the trappings of, I've been working hard, so now it's time that I get some benefit of it. Now it's time to go to the party. Now it's time to take those extra vacations. Now it's time to rack up my bills because I deserve this. Sounds like the devil, the evil one. The human nature is attacking us in that and telling us, quit what you're doing. What you're doing is not important anymore. You need to go do this other thing. You deserve it. Well, Nehemiah says in 6:3, I'm doing great work and I cannot come down. And too many of us let distractions of the world, the attacks, the negative, bring us down off of our ladder. We allow the craziness of other people doing things to bring us down off of our work. We allow COVID to bring us down and stop us. We allow crazy election stuff on TV, and we're all glued to Fox or NBC or CBS or CNN or whatever your thing is. We're glued to that because we need to know what's going to happen in North Carolina. We allow that to stop us from doing our work. We allow that celebrating, and that's a self-inflicted thing. It's, well, I deserve this now. I've been working hard. A lot of us, me included, put on that COVID 15 or 20. Why did we do that? Because we thought we deserved it. We thought, well, I'm stuck at home, nothing else to do. Might as well eat and have this special thing to eat more and throw this, cook this special bread and do all that. That's a function of taking our eye off the prize. Now, there's nothing wrong with treating ourselves a little bit better, but we can't throw ourselves that party because our work's not done. And I think Nehemiah shows us that. But he also reminds us that if we stay committed to our work, what that success looks like. And so a wall that had been down for hundreds of years, people had been victimized for 10 generations. Construction was completed on that wall in 52 days. 52 days, people went from being vulnerable and attacked to safe behind walls because a man committed to the work he had to be done. And I think that's one thing we've all got to commit ourselves to now, is what is that work? What's the wall we're supposed to be rebuilding? What does that look like? Not what are the attacks, not COVID, not elections, not I deserve a new car, I deserve a new, snowmobile. Is what are we going to do to stay committed to the work? But I think the biggest thing that we see a lot of leaders have problems with is they don't know what they want. This quote, Olivia Pope. Olivia Pope is a fictional character in the television show Scandal. Have you ever watched that show? In the first few seasons, every episode starts with there's somebody who's made a mistake, who's got a problem, who's being a victim, and they come to Olivia Pope for help. And she asks them to begin each episode, what do you want? And nobody can ever say what they want. They can all tell about what the problem is, but they haven't defined what success is. And I see too many leaders who are in that same role, in that same position. And I bet some of you out there are in that same exact position today. You've achieved incredible success. In a lot of cases, you've achieved your goals and you don't know what you want next. So what you have isn't very much fun. What you have seems boring because you're not doing anything next. You don't know what you want. So as leaders, we've got to stop and use this time to determine what do we want? What does success look like? How will you know that you are a good and faithful servant if you don't know what you're supposed to be serving at, if you don't know what walls you're supposed to be rebuilding? And it's critically important that we do that and understand it because, as this slide shows, will you get to the top and realize you had your ladder up against the wrong building or the wrong wall? Will you realize that you achieved what you wanted, so then you let karma, the world, progress, whatever it was, just the flow of the stream, determine your next effort, your next thing. And so you're up against a wall that you don't care about. You don't have a vision that that wall is going to bring you security or that wall is going to bring you incredible joy or serve the people that you believe are important to serve. So it's critically important that you understand, what do you want? And what are you willing to do to get that? But the hard part is you can't just be casual about it. To succeed today, we must be unreasonable. And there's a reason that's bold and in color. Unreasonable in our expectations for ourselves and our own organizations. A lot of us in leadership are really good about being unreasonable for other people's performance, unreasonable in the level of expectations of service that we get. We're unreasonable when we don't get incredible service at a local restaurant. We're unreasonable and have those expectations about how our new cars should drive. But we don't set those same unreasonable expectations for ourselves and our own organizations. But in a world that we're in today of COVID, where data tells us that 30% of all churches are going to fail in the next 18 months. 30% of churches will close their doors in the next 18 months. I saw data recently that said 40% of restaurants will close in the next 12 months and never reopen. We're seeing our competitors, no matter what industry you're in, fail. They're closing and they're not going to reopen. We're seeing mergers like it's never been seen before. So in a time like that, where the success or failure rate is unreasonable, we should never be seeing this, but we are. The times have changed, so we can't be like the bull and go back to our Corinthia, think that there's a safe place we can go to that we can hide, that nobody can see us. that might have worked when we were 3-year-olds and we built tents in our bedrooms with blankets and boxes. It doesn't work today for leaders. So we have to have unreasonable expectations about what we are going to do to meet the needs of our customers, our investors, and our employees, our team members. And if we do that, then we earn the right for the ability to compete. But unreasonable is the minimum payment, the ante to get into the game to succeed in the future. But it isn't just today that you have to challenge and change your best to be unreasonable about those things. I'm reminded of 2 companies, and you see their logos up there, Netflix and Intel. You know, Intel is, one of those things that if they hadn't had really, catchy jingles and great commercials, you might not know who they are, except as I look down on my laptop, there's a little Intel sticker on there. But Intel, if we go back to the founding of Intel, they were a memory company. So today they're a processor company. They make the computer go faster. Before, they stored the data. And they were built on this idea of being data storage. And so Gordon Moore is the chairman of the board of Intel at the time. And Gordon Moore is famous in Silicon Valley for Moore's Law, which says about processing speed and pricing. And it's a famous guy in that industry. So he and the CEO are looking at their business and realizing the Japanese are killing them. And they've got about a year left, maybe 18 months, before the Japanese price and quality will drive them out of business. And the 2 of them sat in their office at Intel and asked the question, when the board fires us, what are the first things our replacements are going to do? And why are we waiting? What are the first thing your replacements are going to do? And why are you waiting? Think about that. I want you to take a minute and think about it. What are the decisions you're deferring because they're hard? What are the decisions that you're deferring because people won't like it? You're going to be criticized. People are going to complain. It's going to be painful for folks. Some people's jobs are going to go away. In Intel's case, they completely dumped their memory business and went into the processing business. And because of that, you know who they are. And I had the data somewhere of non-Apple products. There's something like 70% of all laptops in America have an Intel processor in them. So what are those big decisions you're deferring because it's not easy? Are you in a currencia when you do that? Are you sitting in that arena believing you're safe because nobody can see you, they're ignoring you? That's your safe place? That's home base if you're a kid playing tag? Probably that's what you're doing. You're not thinking of it that way, but you're deferring the decision that could make your organization thrive. Netflix is one of those that, most of you on this call today will remember. Netflix was an envelope you got in the mail, and it had a DVD in it. If you really had the good subscription, you had 2 DVDs in it. And you could keep those DVDs as long as you wanted, but you paid 1 monthly fee. And so you could get, I think if you really worked it right and you were close, you could probably get 6 or 7 DVDs in a month, watching them and sending them back in. But you had to send it in and wait for the next one to arrive. Netflix very quickly realized that wasn't their business model. Their business model was digitally streaming things. And I can remember the day they announced they were going to digital streaming and the outrage in the media. The news, the nightly news was like, these people are idiots. Who's ever going to do this? They're collapsing the industry. It was outrage by their customers. But we all know, in fact, they were right. They led the way. But they're no longer counting on just streaming. They're now the largest production company of original productions in America. They're bigger than all the studios. They're bigger than all the TV networks. In fact, in 2019, they had more than 100 Emmy nominations, led all media in Emmy nominations. So people who went from a single envelope in less than a generation are the #1 producer of content in the country. Now, how does that happen? Because they made a commitment to challenge and change their best every day. Said what we're doing is working. I mean, frankly, they put Blockbuster out of business. What we're doing is working. People would rather order, or in a lot of places, if you're rural like I was at the time, there wasn't a Blockbuster. So Netflix became my Blockbuster. They became the place that I could get first-run movies and get them whenever I wanted them. It may take 3 days to get it in the mail, but it's going to come. I didn't have to keep going to my local video store and looking behind the box to see if there really was a copy there. I knew I was going to get it. They said, no, that's not the future. The future's streaming. And then they said, no, the future is producing the content that gets streamed. We're a content producer. And too many of us out there think, well, this is how we've ever always done it. This is our currency. This is where we're safe. And in fact, that's the place that we're the most vulnerable, where we lack safety. But we can't do it by ourselves. And that's what too many of us as leaders, particularly right now where we're vulnerable, because a lot of you haven't been with your teams fully engaged. You're trying to do things in small groups, or you're trying to do things, over Zoom. And in some cases, I was with a company online, Monday, maybe Tuesday. And they hadn't been together for 9 months. 9 months since they'd been together. And frankly, they were with us because they're going to die. They've missed the mark, and they can't change fast enough now. And it's sad to see. But the organizations that are thriving understand the concept of all hands on deck. Now, it's one of those things, there's no one on this call who hasn't heard that term. But what's it mean? We all have those terms in our life that we've heard that we don't really know what it means. So let's talk about that. So all hands on deck goes back to the idea that sailors of ancient day had no way of moving a boat on the ocean except for a sail. So what happens when the wind stops blowing? In a lot of cases, if the current or the waves will take you in and crash you into the shore. They'll ground you on the beach. At the very least, you'll sit there and starve to death or run out of water if you're there long enough with that wind. So you've got to change your direction. You've got to change your trajectory. But how do you do that if you don't have wind? A lot of us feel that way right now. We had great wind at our back come March 1st, and by March 15th, it felt like all the wind was sucked out of the room. Maybe even it felt like there was stuff blowing against us. In a lot of industries now, if you're in healthcare or you're in hospitality, certainly it feels like the wind's blowing against you. But what do? And you can sail against the wind. So if it's blowing against us, that's actually pretty easy. It's just about changing the tack, changing how you're managing that wind, but you can still move forward even when the wind's blowing against you. It's harder, it takes more energy, it takes more skills, but you can survive and you can thrive when the wind's blowing against you. But what do you do if you're becalmed? What do you do if there's no advantage right now? And a lot of our businesses are in that situation. We don't know what to do. So as ancient sailors taught us, ancient mariners, first thing you do is you take all the rope, all the line on the boat, and you tie it together. And you tie it to your anchor. This anchor is called a kedge anchor on a boat in those days. And you tie the ropes to the anchor, and you take the anchor, and you put it in a rowboat, and you row it out as far as the ropes will allow you to go. And you drop the anchor in the ocean. And then you put all hands on deck on that rope. And they all, hand over hand, pull the boat to the anchor. And you repeat it over and over and over until you move forward. Now, what you'll find is it's hard work. But when the winds come back, you'll also find that you are miles ahead of your competition. You also will find that you've taken yourself out of danger. You're not going to be blown into the shore. You're not going to be beached on the beach. Your crew isn't going to starve to death or die of thirst. All because you put all hands on deck and you pulled yourself to the future. So right now, when it feels safe, it feels like that Carencia is the safe place to be. What we know is great leaders pull themselves to the future. Great leaders make a commitment that they refuse to participate in bobbing in the ocean, because they know the most dangerous time for a boat is when the current's carrying it and there's no control over it, because you are going to hit the shore. You're going to crash that boat. So what are you going to do to keep that boat from being crashed? You got to pull yourself forward. You've got to decide and change the future. And you've got to be clear about what that is. You know, we started out earlier with the quote of, what do you want by Olivia Pope? But this is the same thing now, just spun a little bit different. Ambiguity is our enemy. So if you don't know what you want, if it's like, what happens, happens. If you can't define where you're going, then your employees are going to leave you, particularly those employees under the age of 30 or so. And it isn't because they're Gen X or millennial or any of that. It's because when they were in the second grade, they were given day planners. Because we told them you need to plan your life. You need to put on your calendar today when your tests are. Now let's go backwards and say, okay, well, if you have a test on Tuesday, you need to start studying on the Tuesday before that. And you need to know when your vacation days are. And you need to know how to plan these things out. What are your reading requirements? At second grade, we began to teach people that. Well, those people are now 30. 22 in your workforce, and they're not willing to deal with ambiguity. You need to give them a clear path, and you need to communicate it over and over. If you allow that to exist, it will destroy your company. So in these doldrums that we're in these times of uncertainty, you've got to make a commitment of what are we going to do? What do we want? And what are we willing to do to get it? And you've got to be clear and communicate that. You've got to over-communicate. And I'm a little tired of hearing people my age, who are like, oh, these millennials, oh, these Gen X, oh, that they want to be communicated to all the time. Well, quit saying that. You sound like a fool and an idiot when you say that. Please quit. It makes you look dumb. Everybody wants to be communicated. You wanted to be communicated to when you were at that age. Everyone wants communication. It's the #1 indicator of high-performance organizations. And Jeffrey started out saying, we've been named by a lot of groups as the best small business to work for in America. Yesterday, we were recognized by Outside Magazine as the top 50. We're number 14 small businesses in America to work for. Well, it isn't because our benefits are better. Our benefits are good. It isn't because, we live in a shiny, cool, hip place. You look at the list of the other companies on there, we don't. It's because we focus on communication. We focus on talking to people every day about where we're going and what the direction we're going in. We were in a room together. I would love it. It was a big ballroom with a big, impressive chandelier in the middle of the room, because it makes this analogy so much easier. If you picture whatever your room is in today, wherever you're at, look to the ceiling and imagine a giant rubber bucket. Giant, or it just couldn't get any bigger and be held in that room. And that giant rubber bucket is water pouring into it, just pouring into that bucket. And because it's rubber, it just keeps expanding. See it? Can you see the bucket expanding? Now imagine it has a leak in it. It's not a big leak, but it's a hose leak. Water's coming out of that bucket. Now, imagine that rubber bucket is your corporate, your organizational, your family communications. The more you pour in, the more the bucket expands and the bucket's leaking. So you have to pour that much more in to keep people satiated, to keep people understanding where we're going and why we should go there. And don't forget the why. Nobody wants to know just where we're going. They want to know why. What's it going to look like when we get there? How do we know we're successful when we do that as a leader, as a point leader of the organization? That's your number one role. I don't care what anybody else tells you. It's not to make a profit. You can't make a profit if you're not a great communicator. It's impossible. You cannot long-term succeed if you're not a great communicator. And in today's world, well, your number one asset is talent, is people. If you can't give those people what they need, communication is the number one thing they want. If you can't give them this wiping away of ambiguity, a certainty of a path, even if the certainty has multiple off-ramps on that road, if you can't give that to them, they won't stay with you. And if they don't stay with you, you can't succeed. So communications and the evaporation of ambiguity are critical to your future growth and your future success. But we also have to remember that we're in a time where people are incredibly raw. People are incredibly fearful, even if they don't know why they're fearful. I mean, I talked about it earlier. Turn on the news, whether it's COVID cases on the rise, whether it's crazy politics. And it's crazy. My daughter is in New York City working, and election night, the video outside of her window is blue lights flashing in the streets and streets being closed and armed police providing security because of the riots they're anticipating near Central Park. And it's scary. It's a scary world out there. It doesn't matter who you are. People are raw and vulnerable. And that gives us great opportunities as leaders to embrace that, to embrace the unique experiences that people are having, the unique needs, wants, and desires they have. We live in a world that's changing dramatically. American business, which most of us on this call are part of, what we know is as business environments, a function of World War II. It's a function of people prior to World War II were predominantly agriculture-based country. The cities that had manufacturing, even then, people in those cities went home to lunch from the factory. So it really was localized. There wasn't a big global supply chain. There was a national supply chain. Excuse me, a little bug today in my throat. Wasn't a national supply chain of products. Things were still localized. But then the men come back, and some women, from World War II, and they had seen military efficiencies. They'd seen what a supply chain looked like. There was huge amounts of resources because we were restocking the cabinets and the garages and the refrigerators of the world. So we were restocking the world. So there was this great efficiency created in business, a hierarchy created out of military strategy, because that's what people had learned. And that served us really well for generations. Well, it doesn't serve us today. That's not how people expect to work. That's not what the work requires. The work requires a much different strategy. And those great organizations understand that. And they understand that individualization and that worldview are critical to doing that. Boston Consulting Group, who, if you don't follow them, you really should. They produce incredible research. I can't afford to hire them for anything. Their fees are too high. So being able to use what they create for others is the next best thing. And they did a longitudinal study of what success looks like. And this slide's about a month old, I think. But it's, transforming our organizations. We as leaders have got to embrace the head, the heart, and hands. For those of us that are in the faith community, we understand that. Because that's a lot what we know that we have to engage people in church about. Those of us who've led churches, those who have been deacons or alders or whatever your denomination calls it, understand that if you truly want to get somebody engaged in their faith, engaged in church as community, not building, engaged in that, you've got to engage their head. They have to understand the faith, because it's one thing to read it, it's a whole nother thing to believe it. You got to engage their heart, say, now I have an obligation to live those practices that I've read, that I intellectually understand. And then you've got to get them to take action, whether that's volunteering in the church, whether that's bringing people to church, whether that's asking people to join you on your faith journey and accept Christ as our Lord. But we understand this in a church context, but how many of us are engaging this in a work context? How many of us are talking about, here's what we have to do intellectually, here's what our industry requires, here's why we do it, here's what our mission and our heart is, and now here's how we execute it, and here's the resources you're getting, and how we reinvent what that looks like. I think this slide is incredibly powerful, regardless of where you are in your journey, regardless of where you are in terms of hierarchy in your company, regardless of whether it's faith, family, or your functions in the office. So please, and if you'd like this, you can, this slide deck, we're glad to share with anybody. You can get me at ron@ronkitchens.com. That's ron@ronkitchens.com. And we'll send you this slide or any of the slides in the deck. But this one is really incredibly important and serves to me as a reminder of what my obligation is. Now, can we change the slide? There we go. The four most powerful words, and I think if you hit that slide, there we go. Four most powerful words in the English language are, I believe in you. I believe in you. Now, why is that important? Because every human needs to hear that. People need to know that you respect them. People need to understand that what they do is important, that they are seen. And again, the people of a certain age start going, well, those are Gen X, and I happen to be a Gen X, but Gen X or those are millennials, or, this or that, they can't, they all need praised all the time. Please don't say that anymore. You need praise too. You want to be validated. You want to be respected. You want people to know that they are loved. So you see this on the right hand of the slides, a little thing that we call a catallation. So I have a pad of them on my desk, as does everybody else in the organization. And that catalyst symbol is our organizational symbol. And the notes are read every Friday. I missed the meeting this morning because I'm with you. But at 8:05 every Friday, my team, all 30 people or so, are standing in a circle and they're reading notes to each other. And those notes say, I believe in you. Here's what I saw this week. Thank you for going above and beyond. I saw that you did this and it wasn't your job or your role. I know the impact you're having. And we write them to friends and people that we see in the community doing these incredible things. But they're really about saying, I love you. Not Eros love, not the little fat baby with the wings and the archer's bow, but agape love, which the Greeks tell us, and the Greeks had 7 words for love. Agape is the love of community. Agape is the love of Christ. That's what saying I believe in you is about for us. And it's important that you don't just send the note. We could throw them down on everybody's desk. We could walk around like it's, Valentine's Day and put it, in everybody's little box. They could get their notes. But it's incredibly important that you speak the truth. It's incredibly important that everybody else in the organization hear you say how amazing somebody is. They hear you say, let me give whatever credibility I have to that person because what they're doing is amazing. That's pretty incredible. And it's pretty important that you do that. So take the time today to grant to those around you this incredible gift of saying, I believe in you. You don't need a fancy, custom-made notepad to do it. You can write it on anything you want. But write it so they tangibly have it and say it so they hear it, and better off say it in front of others so a community hears it. That's the way you change communities. I'm going to leave you with this one quote. It's my favorite quote. And I know you could read it, but I think it's important that we dissect it a little bit. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtfully committed citizens can change the world. Thoughtfully committed can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. You don't need to be a big corporate behemoth to change the world. You don't need a huge bank account to change the world. You don't need access to the national media to change the world. I did an interview the other day with a podcast, and the guy has 40 million followers on social media. 40 million. Think about that. That's more people that follow him in a day than watch all of the network news combined. Follow this one person. And the rules have changed. But what never has changed is that thoughtfully committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. We can go back in our history. And in this group, we can go back to 12 men who made a commitment to change the world. And today, because of that, the name that people know globally above all else, above all other names, is Jesus. Because 12 thoughtfully committed men went forward to change the world. I bet you can do a little bit of that yourself. So thanks for letting me be here with you today. As Jeffrey said, I'd be glad to take some questions, and I'll turn it back over to whoever's controlling things because I can't see anybody. So I would love to take any questions you have.
That was spectacular, Ron. We just can't thank you enough. So we have questions coming in. Teresa, over to you.
Okay, our first question is from Vicki Harris, and Vicki says, these are such good reminders, very timely. As leaders, how do we maintain our mental health during all that is happening in America?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, it's cliche to say it, when you find yourself on a dead horse, the first thing you should do is get off. And so quit, horse is falling over on its side and you're still sitting on it banging it, thinking this is going to change. So you're not going to change it, so get off. Which is another way of saying, quit bringing poison into your house and in your life. So there's nothing that's going to make you better by watching CNN or Fox today. Nothing. Nothing in your life is going to change or get better. Don't put poisons in your life. Second thing is, clearly understand where your vulnerabilities are and how you're going to address those vulnerabilities. And we all have that voice in our head. We all have that voice that says you're not worthy, you're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough, you're not smart enough. Who do you think you are to be this great? Well, I tell you who you are. You're the child of God. And every one of you were put in for a mission. But we've forgotten what wall we're supposed to be on. So you've got to know what wall you're supposed to be on, and then you've got to ignore the rest. And that's hard, but you got to put up barriers. Don't bring that craziness in. Get off Facebook. You know, I spend a lot of my time coaching executives and leaders. As Jeffrey said, Southwest Michigan First operates here in Southwest Michigan, but we also have a national company called C2, where we work with 400 cities, states, countries, regions all over, really North America. But I coach a lot of governors. So last year, 14 governors who are clients that we work with. And it's amazing to me how many times they tell me about Facebook. Well, it's just on social media, I'm getting criticized and all that. And I'm like, really? Really, that matters to you? So, well, come on, you and I will go down to the local coffee shop, and I can get hundreds of people there to tell you how wonderful you are. Will that counteract this for you? Well, that'd be nice to kind of admit it's nice to have people to tell you that I believe in you. So why are you bringing that negative in there into your life that is self-imposed poison? You know, when I grew up in the Ozark Mountains and on the Missouri-Arkansas line, at the time that, that's the place the Beverly Hillbillies are from, and I still knew people like that, just still existed in my family. Some of my family cousins still lived in that kind of old world of, there's no heat in the house and outhouses, no running water inside. And I tell you that because there was a term that I haven't heard anywhere else called stealing peas. And when somebody would be really negative about something, my grandfather would say, well, they're stealing peas. And I never really dissected what he meant till I was probably in high school. And I asked my grandma, what do you mean they're stealing peas? And he said, well, you got a plate of food in front of you. And my grandfather didn't like peas, didn't like green vegetables at all, but he didn't like peas. And he said, so I don't like peas, but I don't want anybody stealing food off my plate. I wouldn't let him take food off of your plate, even if it was peas. You're stealing from me. When people steal your joy, when you let people in your life that bring that negativity, all they're doing is stealing food, nutrition off of your plate, stealing from you and your family, stealing your joy. So you gotta protect. You gotta stay up on that wall. Don't let the foolishness get you, because it's tough out there. I mentioned earlier I'm on the board of Western, and so I spend a lot of time reading these days about college students, and mental health is the #1 issue. It isn't that they're not prepared academically. It's not financial issues. It is a scary, tough place, and that ambiguity of college is really tough on mental health for them. So at Western, we had a board meeting yesterday, and the presentation part of it for us, the majority of that time was about how we can support the mental health of our students and bring these anxiety levels down. So you got to protect yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Another incoming question here.
We've got a question from Raymond Shoup, and Raymond asks, how do you stay focused on the important things for your organization? Do you time block, use an app, create a to-do list? What is your process? We've got a couple other questions too, so anything we don't get to, by the way, we will make sure we get the answers and get that out as a follow-up for you.
Absolutely. So what we've done organizationally, because I'm going to go take it off the wall. So I'm going to disappear for 3 seconds. That is very unprofessional to do, but so in our world, we've defined, everyone in the organization fits into 4 categories: a visionary, an integrator, a producer, an operator. And we've clearly defined what those roles are. So me, as the point leader, I serve as the visionary. And so my responsibility is big ideas, big relationships, big problems, culture and quality, and research and content. So those are the things that I have to focus on. Now, the integrators are about profit and loss and leading the operation, and community relations and quality control. In your organization, it's probably the vice presidents. Then producers are sales, consulting, client, services, and revenue. Those are our sales and delivery people. And then we have operators that are product delivery and administrative support, operations support. And then we break down who's under each of those. So for me, I like doing everything. I've done every job in the organization. I've embraced every role. I enjoy that. But I can't do those things and be honest and not be a thief. Because if I'm doing something that's not in my focus, then what I've done is said either you're the person who I'm taking that from are incompetent, and so I have to do it. And if that's true, then we probably ought to have a different discussion. But mostly it's doing it because I get bored. Well, our investors don't pay me to get bored. They don't pay me to do the roles and the responsibilities below my defined roles, because we have other people who are masters of those things. So I think you have to clearly define, here's what you're going to do. And that, for me, that was really hard. It was really hard because I love to work on a team. It's why I'm not a sole practitioner, consultant, traveling the world in airplanes, working with leaders. I could do that, and frankly, I'd make a lot more money. But I want to work on a team. I want to be part of a team that's doing great things and having great impact. But just like a baseball team, every position has different responsibilities, takes different skills, has different reactions for the same play. A ball hit onto a field, every player has a reaction that's expected, and they're all different than the other player. And we have to teach that. And it's really hard, but we have to be consistent and honest about that. If we don't, then what we end up with is a team that does all the same role, and you can't win if everybody on the team's playing the same position.
Wow, that's powerful. Ron, we'll take one more here before we go into the next portion of the presentation.
So a question from Phil Sims. Ron, thank you for your wisdom and insight pertaining to engaging your team at the head, heart, and hands. How do you approach this with your team? Is this an endeavor the team leadership does, or do you engage setting direction with a larger group from your company?
Yes, so we meet every morning at 8:05 as an organization. We call it our Scrum, and we can talk about why it's called that at some point. But we meet every morning, and we're very structured about what we do at those meetings. Most of them take about 15 minutes, but it's mandatory. If you're in the house, if you're not with a client or traveling, then you're expected to be at the meeting, and frankly, people don't miss it. And we're talking about some aspect of head, heart, or hands during those meetings. And so we've curated it. We have we call it run of show, but we have a plan out, a cadence for our work that we're going to work with our team on for a quarter, and we're incorporating all of those aspects of what we want to talk about. Now, COVID threw it out the window, and so where I normally would do kind of an all hands talk monthly, some weeks we're doing it, or some months we're doing it every week. But it's about addressing that and just admitting vulnerability and admitting that, hey, we're making plans in a world that we don't control, like today's announcement that, the governor wants everybody to stay home from work who doesn't have to be at work and all of those things. We don't control that. And so what we control is our reaction to it. What we control is the planning. What we control is how we take care of people. What we control is what we can control. But admitting that and being vulnerable enough to say, I don't know, but here's the information I have, here's the resources I have, and here's the decisions that we're making, are critical in today's world. And so I think just not just being so open to your own frailties and rawness is the future of leadership.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Ron. We're going to very, very quickly just interject what some of these questions are coming in so we can percolate. We'll get back to the audience and follow up with a response here. Ron, today's whole, the whole aspect of this sharpening is iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. It's the takeaway. What are we walking out of here with? And there's so much. There's dozens and dozens of things here that we're all going to come out of this session with. When you said, COVID threw it out the window, I think that was your expression. Or it could be anything. Could be this or that or something else threw it out the window. In other words, it's not the same way that it was before. And in light of that, I mean, here's the takeaway. One of the things we did is we brought back a 15-year-old presentation, dusted it, pulled it off the shelf, dusted it, presented it to the senior management team. It is profound. Many of you remember it. Who moved my cheese? Okay, and that's a great takeaway. It would encourage you. If this is where you're at and your team's at, go through that exercise. Who moved my cheese? It is just profound to regroup, culminating the year, regroup. Going into 2021, that's what this is all about. Teresa, there's a couple more questions, and we're just gonna, pose those here, what they are, and we'll percolate and get back.
Yes, so we'll follow up in a communication after this meeting, but Kelly Dugan also asks about additional thoughts and recommendations in these times for the micro solo entrepreneur business. And Mary Jane Mapes also provided a comment just thanking you for the wonderful content. So we'll follow up with that following this presentation.
And then just some things incoming on technology, just looking for resources that can keep us abreast of future trends. How do we stay ahead of the curve as it pertains to technology? You were using the example, Ron, with Netflix and just that whole transition of technology and just where our resources. And to put in perspective, we reach about 3,000 people annually through the Business Roundtable CBRT. We have a dozen roundtables in addition to the leadership events, which touch maybe 110, 130 CEOs pretty much directly on a month-to-month basis. And those are the kinds of folks that are really looking for these kinds of answers forward. The other thing here is marketing. So one in the technology, the other in the marketing arena, and it's really about profiling and how can we do a better job identifying prospects to work with in today's market. Again, that kind of parallels Who Moved My Cheese as well. Okay, with these market conditions, the biggest challenge, and what we're hearing is 80% of the members of the Business Roundtable in the state of Michigan have a lack of work. So how do we get those backlogs reinstituted? How do we really, profile from that marketing? I think as far as challenges that have come in, again, it's extreme isolation, depression, overwhelming on the emotional side, and on the business side, we already mentioned lack of work, and just the other, which you kind of alluded to, Ron, when you said threw it out the window, okay, is the challenges with collaboration, to leadership and with employees to continue that ability to collaborate on a day-to-day basis. I always use the analogy, there's a reason why Herman Miller and Hayworth and Steelcase for the last decade have captured workplace solutions with collaboration furniture. For the last decade, the whole focus has been people together collaborating, and without people being together and the ability to collaborate, that's a huge challenge. So these are the kinds of things we'll get back with a write-up and a response to these and any others. So keep them coming. Keep chatting. We will get back. At this time, we want to really reflect on Ron's testimony and how did Ron get to where he's at today. We're going to do an invitation right after that. And then following that, we want your takeaways from the session. That is very important. That feedback is critical. What are you walking out with today? What did you get from today's presentation? And if you could send that over as well. So Ron, back to you. How did you get to where you're at? Where did it all start?
Well, I think, when a lot of people know my story and know I grew up extremely poor, and, my parents, neither, they both left school after the 8th grade, and my dad was killed when I was 4. My mother's 15 years older than I am, and my dad's 16. My dad was killed at 20 in an industrial accident because he couldn't read the sign that said, "Don't do this." And he was illiterate because he suffered from the same form of dyslexia that I have. And I say that because we grew up, we were not suburban, upscale middle class folks. We were poor, just about as poor as you can go. And I went to 13 different schools before the 6th grade. And so we're always moving, that kind of the most vulnerable poor in America. And we got a knock on the door one day by a guy named Francis Countryman. Francis Countryman, if you'll picture him, picture a guy about 5'4". His legs, if they were straight, he might be 5'8" or 10, but he had bow legs, and the world had pushed Francis down. He was a dairy farmer and had a little small construction company, and we lived in a rental house on his dairy farm. Knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I see you don't go to church. I'd love for you to come to my church." And my mom, for lots of reasons, kind of turned him down. And he said, "Well, how about if I come by and pick up your kids?" And so Francis Countryman is in his 60s at this point, maybe close to 70. And my brother John and I are 2nd and 4th grade. And my mom agreed for lots of reasons, probably mostly because it meant that we were gone so she could sleep in and on a Sunday. And so for several years, Francis Countryman came by every Sunday. I picked my brother John and I up, took us to church with him, made sure we understood our Sunday school lessons, occasionally took us to lunch after church. It's Francis Countryman who gave me, and I can still remember it, and it may be the first new shirt I ever unwrapped, or a white shirt that I wore when I was baptized in the Finley River with my brother John. It was Francis Countryman who stood there and then loaded us in his Ford Econoline van full of tools that smelled like, cedar sawdust. It was because of him And because he believed in what the gospel told him, he believed he had a responsibility to bring others to Christ, that I got brought to Christ in a little teeny Mount Zion Baptist church in a farm crossroad in the middle of nowhere. And the church still exists. It still doesn't have more than 75, 70 people show up on, Easter Sunday. But here was a man who had his own grandchildren, didn't need, wasn't adopt an urchin day. He was a man who read his Bible and believed that he had a responsibility to bring others to Christ by sharing the good news of the gospel. And too many of us have forgotten that. Church has become, for a lot of us, something we record on our DVR and we watch it when it's convenient. We're not in community now, and we're not holding ourselves responsible to that. And so I think for me right now, faith is about the smallest of acts. I wear this, I'm sitting here playing with it. Wear this bracelet. You can't really tell, I'm sure, but it's a Fisher of Men bracelet. So it's little fishing swivels. And it reminds me of Francis Countryman. It reminds me of my responsibility to be a fisher of men. And I think that's for us, a lot of us on this call, is one of those things that we've forgotten, or we believe the dialogue. It says we have to separate faith and work. We have to separate faith and community. We have to separate those things. Now, I don't need you to be on a street corner with a boombox and a sign that says the end is near and screaming at people about how evil and awful they are. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying, oh, this bracelet, it's a Fisher of Men bracelet, and it reminds me of my responsibility. And telling about that story, I've only had one occasion that anybody ever reacted negatively, and I find out later that they had been hurt by the faith. And since we've had a lot of conversations about where they are in their journey, I don't know that I'll ever convince them that I'm on the right path, but it's still my responsibility to talk about it. So that's my journey. And thanks for asking that question.
We just can't thank you, Ron, enough for sharing. And this for many within earshot may be the most important decision that you'll ever make. And that's what Ron is expressing, how to find peace with God. And perhaps you're sitting here and you realize that you never made a Christian commitment. But don't delay that decision. We want to encourage you right now to embrace God's love today and receive the salvation that only Jesus Christ gives. Here are 5 simple steps that you can take to find that assurance of salvation. As Ron has expressed, first, we need to recognize your need. Romans 3:23, the Bible tells us that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We're all sinners and we need a Savior. Number 2, repent of your sins. Our sins create a wall that separates us from God, and by confessing our sins and turning from them, we will find forgiveness. The Bible promises in 1 John 1:9 that if we confess our sins, he is faithful and righteous to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And finally, believe in Jesus. As Ron so aptly put it, God wrought a miracle when he sent his only son to die so that he could pay for all our sins. Put your faith in him and believe in his power to save you. The Bible says in John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, and whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. And now, in this session, understand that Jesus is the atonement on the cross, the bridge between us, mortal man, and Almighty God in heaven. Through Jesus, we have redemption, as if we've never sinned, and through Jesus, we have forgiveness every day. And so finally receive his salvation. In John 1:12, but as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God. And thank him for loving and forgiving you, and ask him into your heart right now in this session. There's a guarantee that we are all going to die. There's no question about it. We are all going to die, and we're going to spend eternity somewhere, either in heaven or in hell. And so we want you to have an opportunity here, and we're going to give an invitation. We're going to ask for every head to be bowed and just pray with us. And this may be the most important decision you'll ever make in your life. Let's pray together. Lord, I recognize my need for you as my Savior. I confess my sins to you now, and I turn from them. And I ask for your forgiveness, Lord. I believe in you, Lord Jesus, that you died for me, that I might have eternal life with you in heaven. Lord Jesus, I receive you now in my heart, and I thank you for forgiving me. I thank you that you love me, and I thank you that you receive me into your kingdom. I believe in my heart that you are my Lord, and that God raised you from the dead, that I might be saved and spend eternity with you. I thank you, Lord, that I am now part of God's family, and I commit my life to you from this day forward. Amen. We just thank you for praying with us. And those that prayed this prayer for the very first time, we want you to respond, and we'll follow up with you. We have information we'd like to send you and come alongside and congratulate you on this decision. There may be many here, as was the case for me, that gave your heart to the Lord very young in age, and over time, drifted, and then came back and recommitted your heart to the Lord. And if you've done that, let us know as well. And we would just say welcome back home to those that right now in this session have recommitted their lives to the Lord. And finally, that fifth process through all of this is to confess your faith. Your faith. In Romans 10:9, the Bible says that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. And having been saved, tell folks about it. Tell someone about it. It's exciting, and share your faith and come back full circle, as Ron so aptly put it in this eloquent testimony. And we just thank you so much for sharing that with us, Ron. Very, very impactful. And so as we begin to culminate for the day here, we just thank you for everybody's participation. And I think, Teresa, there's probably dozens and dozens of takeaways, that we're getting. I don't know if there's a few to share here as we, kind of close, and we'll send these to you in the package as well, because we find that the takeaways are just so reinforcing of any session for sure. But anything come?
A couple of takeaways. Dick Rolfe mentions that neither money nor position nor situation are required to succeed. Determination, creativity, and acceptance of God's love win every time. From Mary Jane Mates, we have the important reminder to get clear as to what success looks like to stay focused and to remain unreasonably committed to our expectations for ourselves and our organizations.
Awesome. And of course, we have roundtables now that follow up from this. We're dealing with challenges, the biggest challenges you have. We're meeting in the days, weeks ahead. We meet every month. We'll send you information on the dozen roundtables we have throughout the state and welcome your participation. We want to remind you that contributions are always welcome. This is the best investment that you can make in the ministry of the Business Roundtable, CBRT. These investments are eternal in impact, and we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We exist only through your sponsorship and through your investments in the ministry, contributions, and donations. We want to again have a special thanks to our sponsors today. And as we conclude, let's take this. Here's another takeaway. Take this with us. This is entitled "Believe," author anonymous, and we close with, "You can only do what you think you can. You will never accomplish more. If you find that you're afraid of yourself, there is little for you in store. For fear comes from the inside first. It's there if you only knew it. And you can win though you face the worst if you believe you are going to do it." We just thank everyone for your participation in this session. Ron Kitchens, thank you so much for a very, very dynamic presentation. And to all, best of continued success. Thank you for attending.